Hi, I'm Seth, and today I'm going to be using a super simple technique to add some inlays to my work. So this is what we're going for. This is a very basic straight line inlay that's added as a decorative touch, in this case to some boxes I'm building, but I've used the same method on tabletops and on other pieces of furniture, and it adds a nice decorative touch, and it's easy to do, and it's a good entry point into starting working with inlays. This method is going to involve using a router, in this case a small handheld or palm router. This one that I have has this very simple fence on it, and I've installed an 1/8 inch bit. I found that the 1/8 inch bit is the right size for this particular size box. However, this could be a 1/4 inch bit just as easily. The key to what makes this so simple is that I'm going to be using the diameter of the bit, the original cut that this bit makes, and I'm going to be fitting my inlay to that. The basic inlay is just going to be a square frame or rectangular frame inside the edges of each of my sides. So to start off, I'm going to mark out where that's going to go. In this case, I'm using two different dimensions. I'm going to come in, my goal is to come in 1 inch all the way around, not including the dovetails that I've got cut into this. So I want to be 1 inch in from there. So I've got two squares set up. This one is set to 1.5 inches, which puts me 1 inch past my dovetails. And this one is set to 1 inch. So that'll allow me to establish all four sides with these two tools. Okay, so let's take a second to talk about my setup here before I actually do anything. Number one, I've got my piece secured. This isn't going anywhere. I've got it clamped down using some bench dogs. And then my router is set up with a fence, and I'm going to set that fence to the distance that I'm going to be routing. Because I've got two different dimensions here, this is 1.5 inches in from the sides, and this is 1 inch in. I'm going to have to do all of my side cuts and then come back and do all the top and bottom cuts. So the router is now set up with a fence, and so I'm going to go in and do all of my side cuts on all four side pieces. The dimensions on the top are a little bit different, and then I'll come back and reset for the top and bottom cuts. The next thing to notice is that I've got a work light set up right here on my piece that's going to illuminate this, because I'm going to really need to be able to see what I'm doing to get in there. The next important piece is going to be the direction that I'm going. So with my router spinning that bit, looking down on the piece like this, it's going to be spinning that bit. It's going to appear clockwise from the top. If I go counterclockwise, that bit is going to be making its cut towards me. And as it makes that cut on this side, because it's rotating in this direction, it's going to want to pull the router in towards the workpiece. Now, if I were to take and go the opposite direction, it would be making that cut again, if it's going clockwise, on the far side away from me, which would want to pull the router out away from the workpiece. Since the fence is what I'm using to establish the dimension, I want to make sure that I'm going to go counterclockwise on this cut, which will pull the router in against the fence and against the workpiece. as I'm getting ready to insert the walnut inlay, I'm set up here with a couple other tools, some very basic stuff. I've got an X-Acto knife. This works well for me, in my opinion, for marking. And then I've got, I don't even know what you'd call this. It came with the X-Acto knife set, but the blade that's on it and the setup, it's more like a chisel. So it's like a very fine pointed chisel. And I found that it works very well for this. I like it. I also have a regular chisel here, which could just as easily be used. But I really like this little X-Acto blade chisel that I've got. The inlay that I'm going to be putting in, I've milled down as close to 1/8 of an inch as I could get, and then I took it to the drum sander and finessed and kept going until I had just the perfect fit, which is just a little tight. It takes some pressure to press it in, and you can see once it's in, it's got some hold, but I can pull it back out. So that's the perfect fit to me. It's tight and would hold in there without any glue, but of course I will be gluing it in. But before I do that, the first thing I have to do on any piece is to clean up these corners. I purposely stayed away from any of the corners here, so now I need to go back and clean them up. So I'm going to start this off by bringing that piece into the very corner. I'm going to miter these. I'm going to mark that exact miter with my knife. And then I prefer to use this little X-Acto chisel, I guess I'll call it, to bring this piece back to that miter. It's not going to move, so I know it's in exactly where it's going to go, and I'm going to come over and mark this second miter. With my second piece, I'm going to bring it up on top of the miter I just cut and mark the matching miter. Okay, now that all the inlay is installed, the last thing to do is to clean this up. When these were installed, I'm sure you noticed that the walnut is proud of the cherry on all of these boxes, and that was on purpose. It's just a little bit easier to work with that way, and then what you want to do is leave it proud, go back and clean it up. Now I'm going to do that with a combination of a block plane, a hand plane, maybe a card scraper, whatever I can do to get it down flush prior to sanding it and assembling this box. This will be the last step. The hard part's already done. This is just to clean it up before assembly. Okay, so there we have it. That's going to wrap this video up. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's a technique that you'll get to use in the future. It's a relatively easy and simple way of adding an inlay and bringing your piece of work to the next level. It requires a minimum amount of tools. And even earlier when you saw me using the drum sander to bring the inlay down to the proper thickness, that could easily have been done with a hand plane as well. I have a drum sander and it makes quick work of doing that. So that's the direction I went, but you absolutely don't need it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. In the next one, I'll be finishing up this series on the boxes. I'll be cutting the lids off, installing the hinges. I'm going to be putting some legs on a couple of them just as a decorative touch. So I hope to see you on the next video as well. Hope you enjoyed this one, and thanks a lot.